Welcome back to the Lehocky Eagles postgame show, live from the beautiful Ocean Casino. You see the sports book in the background. A couple college games on tonight. And of course, the Eagles win 34-28. And it wasn't that close. Interestingly enough, the line with all these injuries went down to what? 6. So people got to push on tonight's game. And, of course, we're back with the gang. I'm Mike Missinelli with Derek Gunn, Seth Joyner, and Mark Farzetta joining us. Time for our Dry Tech 2-minute drill, rapid-fire game analysis. Let's start, fellas. Overall worry factor from 1 to 10 on how the Eagles look right now.
From 1 to 10?
From 1 to 10, what is your worry factor? With 10 being the highest worry.
I would say a 6 right now.
6, so you're not that worried?
And I'm not that worried yet because they beat 2 opponents who are not as talented as they are. There are some flaws, but the bottom line is they're 2 up instead of being 1 up and 1 down. So, and now they have extended time off to get some bodies healed up and to work on some of the things. Brian Johnson has extended time to look over 2 games worth of film to find out where his flaws are as well. So right now, as we sit here tonight, they're 2-0. I'm at a 6 right now in terms of my concern. Do I have concerns? Yes, but I'm at a 6 level right now.
Seth, are you concerned more than 6?
I am. Because the adjustment was made to go to the run game, and that's what saved them. Because had they continued to run plays the way that they run plays, they may have lost this game. And it seems to me that, there's not a major remedy for how the Eagles are actually, they don't have a plan for how to get to the passes that they want to. And I don't know whether it's because, Jalen Hurts isn't reading the defense pre-snap. I'm not sure whether it's the play calls that we're seeing, but I know that when I look at a coach like Andy Reid, and his offensive scheme, they've got routes that are designed to beat certain plays. You hear, people talk about cover 2 beaters, cover 4 beaters, cover 6 beaters. They've got routes that destroy coverages based upon how they know that you play those coverages. And I'm watching our quarterback sit in the pocket, A, not sure of what coverage they're in, and B, not being able to get his wide receivers open against no matter what the coverages are, So that's worrisome for me because they had to go completely to the running game to get any offense going. And if you can't adjust in game and you can't say, okay, if they're giving us cover 4, you're reading it pre-snap, or they're giving us cover 2, and we're going to send a tight end up the seam, and then we're going to run a crosser right behind it to kill cover 2. If your routes aren't deployed in that way and you can't make those checks at the line of scrimmage, then that's problematic going further on. Because when you get to Dallas's defense and the 49ers defense, you damn well better have that worked out.
Jets defense?
Jets defense?
See, I say, he says the running game saved them. I say 2 Viking crucial turnovers saved them. Because if the Vikings had converted those 2 turnovers, that punt return and the Jefferson gap, the Eagles are not running the ball as much as they are because they're playing from behind instead of ahead.
I'm telling you right now, I thought when this season started that the offense would have to carry the defense for a while.
I agree.
It has been completely the other way around because the defense is on one right now. They are turning the ball over at an alarming rate, and as long as they continue to turn the ball over like that, I go back to my notes just last week alone. The Patriots, all of these punts, the strip sack, the interception.
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? They're averaging, almost 3 turnovers a game.
They have 6 in 2 games, yeah.
So when you're averaging turnovers in that way, in that manner, now there's going to come a time where that dries up. That's just the nature of the game. They come in bunches, and then all of a sudden you can't get any at all. So if the offense can't find its footing, and the defense is not turning the ball over, and the special teams continues to be a liability. Jake Elliott missed a 55-yarder tonight. Britton Colby got lucky that we got on a fumble punt. This game could take everything could turn
made up
like
for
that.
it with a 61-yarder prior to halftime, though, which is amazing. Farzy, overall worry factor with Jalen Hurts. Now he made a terrible throw that resulted in an interception, where he should have known better. I didn't see him make a mistake like that all last year.
No, that was the most egregious mistake I think we've seen from Jalen Hurts. So it is concerning. And to go back to Seth Jonas' post, I totally agree with everything you said. I'll be where you're at right now if they look exactly the same and Jalen Hurts looks exactly the same 11 days from now. After they have this time off, hopefully have time to correct things, hopefully have time for Brian Johnson. Look, I wasn't expecting, and I know a lot of people in the offseason were talking about Brian Johnson, how he's known Jalen Hurts since he was 4 years old and all that. That's great. He had never called plays for a 4-year-old Jalen Hurts, and he hadn't called plays for a 24-year-old Jalen Hurts either. So now they're getting that opportunity. I think over the next couple of days here, they're going to get into the coaches' rooms. They're going to have those meetings. They're going to correct it. To talk about the level of if I'm at 10 when it comes to the most possible worried I could be about this team, I'm right now at about a 3. Now, if after 11 days they show a lot of these same problems and Jalen Hurts still isn't recognizing what's in front of him, if he's not making good reads, even on running the football, which he didn't do in this particular game. So many times we watch running backs and they try to bounce the ball outside. They try to dance a little too much. That's what Jalen Hurts did tonight when he looked like he was trying to run the football. But I'm not that concerned yet about Jalen Hurts.
Is that 3 with Hurts, or is that 3 with the overall worry factor?
3 overall, and Jalen Hurts. I'm not going to go.
You're not worried at all.
I'm not going to go right now
for both.
For both, I'm not going to go from picking this team to go into a Super Bowl after 2 games in 5 days to all of a sudden, oh no, there's a great conflagration. This is all on fire. This is going to be terrible all of a sudden. This team is good enough. And look, also this, when it comes to the overall team, the fact that they could just say, all right, we're just going to run the football down their throat. Look, the Eagles set out to build this team as a great team in the trenches. They have accomplished that. To be able to have that kind of push in the middle of your defensive line, to be able to have that kind of dominance from your offensive line is great. And I still think Jalen Hurts is going to return to be an MVP, perennial MVP candidate quarterback.
All right, so it's good that they have another lever that they can pull.
Absolutely.
And the good teams have another lever when they need it.
And I'm not going to ignore the fact that offensive line and that run game and those turnovers bailed the Eagles out. I'm not denying that. But I still think there's a much better brand of football left in Jalen Hurts this year.
All right, let's go with this one now, because we worried about it a little bit, the new coordinators. So far, how is that going, D-Gun?
I'm going to give Sean Desai somewhat of a mulligan tonight because he was playing with such a deficit in terms of personnel. I still have a lot of question marks about Brian Johnson's offense, and can they figure this thing out relatively quickly instead of later? Because they have to. I mean, 17 games is a long season, but it's not that many games. I'm okay with Desai right now until he gets his full complement of people back. Brian Johnson, you got to show me something, man, in terms of play calling. I'm not there yet with him.
All right, let's go to the man who covered tonight's game for JAKIB Sports, the great John McMullen, joining us live from Lincoln Financial Field. Hello, John. Good to see you on the scene now down there, huh?
Yeah, how about that? Back in business, boys. Good to be with you. 2-0.
Yeah, and they're 2-0. Your overall assessment here, they needed the running attack to bail them out a little bit tonight after a shaky start to their offense and a shaky start with the quarterback. So how you feeling right now?
Well, I think it's a mark of a good team when you sort of can win games and you're not playing your best. So I think that's good. But yeah, I mean, offensively, it's kind of disjointed, stilted, whatever adjective you want to use. Be nice to get the passing game going a little bit, but that offensive line, they were blowing people off the ball. And look, I got a lot of respect for Brian Flores, but man, he's playing these light boxes. All these teams like to play these light boxes, and the Eagles are just calling inside zone, inside zone, inside zone. Jason Kelsey was talking about it afterwards, and it's like, we're going to keep doing it. And they just destroyed the Minnesota front. And you got to give the Eagles credit for adjusting to that, because Shane Steichen used to say that all the time. You're going to keep giving me that? I'll take it. So I can't criticize Brian Johnson for doing that.
All right, John, because inquiring minds need to know, forget the X's and O's for just a moment. What did you find out about the intense-looking conversation on the sideline between A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, and Nick Sirianni?
Well, Nick, he wouldn't talk about it at all. He shut it down completely. He said everything's on the sidelines, always going to be private. He was a little, standoffish about it, to put it mildly. Jalen talked about it a little bit and said, look, competitors want the football. They're good friends. They'll get over it. I think it was a heat of the moment type thing. It's interesting, when you have great players, and everybody says it's a good problem to have, but a problem is a problem, right? And when good players don't get the football, sometimes they get upset about it. And tonight was a game where AJ wasn't getting the football, and he got upset about it. So long term, I don't think it's going to be a problem because they are good friends. But, Jalen's not throwing the football well at this stage, I would say. I think it's fair to point that out. He had the 2 deep shots to Devontae Smith. I think that had more to do with the poor coverage of Minnesota, just letting guys get behind him. A lot of bad coverage on both sides, a lot of blown coverages. But the Eagles weren't able to take advantage of it. Maybe that's just because they were running the football so well. They said, let's stop it. But I think when you look at the box score of this game, it looks much worse for the Eagles than it really was. They kind of dominated this game. But you look up at the scoreboard and the Vikings are within 1 score and you say, oh, what's going on here? Very similar to last week. I never got the feeling Minnesota was in this game, and then you look up and, in theory they are. But I thought the Eagles pretty soundly outplayed them.
John, for me, it comes down to how long can the Eagles continue to live on the edge like this? It's almost, I liken it to the game of golf, okay? You keep missing greens, you keep chipping, you get up and down, you get up and down, you get up and down. But sooner or later, you're going to make a bogey, okay?
Bogey?
Yeah,
you're going to make 8.
No, I'm just saying. Sooner or later, it's gonna go sideways for you because that's a lot of stress on your game to always be putting for par instead of 2 putting for par to be 1 putting for par. At some point in time, if they don't get this figured out, it's going to bite them in the behind. And we can talk about, good teams find ways to win. But, I mean, do we really feel like they're a good football team right now? They seem to me like they're still developing into a good football team. All these teams right now, because they don't play in the preseason, everybody's trying to figure it out. Some teams have acclimated to it. Other teams haven't. Some teams have gotten blown out. Some teams, have been right there and lost by a point or whatever at the end of a game. But I think if you keep flirting with and tempting fate like this, sooner or later, it's not going to work out in your favor.
Well, I agree with that. If they play this way against a good team, they're going to lose. But, I kind of, the glass half full, I would say. I'll use the comparison of the old school pitcher in baseball. Like, if you were at Roger Clemens, he would grind through when he didn't have his best stuff and find a way to win games. But eventually you expect those great pitchers to, go 8 innings, give up 3 hits, and completely dominate. That's what you have to expect at some point from the Eagles. If they don't get there, that's a problem. But I think it's a positive when you're playing teams that are more talented than, and they're not playing well, but they find ways to win. I think that part of it's a positive. But yeah, they have not been impressive. I think we could all agree with that.
Well, I'll leave you with this quote. There's 2 things that don't last long, okay? That's pros putting for pars and dogs chasing cars. Okay, so sooner or later, they better get it together.
He's been profound tonight.
Well, all of a sudden we got Plato on the set here with his philosophies. John, you're right. They dominated the game. I mean, for time of possession, 40-20. So, yeah, you're right.
I mean,
They dominated the game, and they had a gear to go to that when the other thing wasn't working, they were able to just take advantage and rip the other team apart.
And that's the thing. That's the thing, Mike. Every time Minnesota did something well, the Eagles answered. That's the mark of a good team as well. They answered. Plus, don't dismiss the 259 yards rushing. Don't dismiss that. I mean,
not at all.
This is the 10th time. This is the 10th time they've done that in the Nick Sirianni era, gone over 200. And with all due respect to DeVonta Smith, these are, DeAndre Swift. These were huge holes he was going through. I mean, I'm not saying anybody could have did it. He had a very good game, but it was nice to play against the Lightbox with that offensive line kind of leaning on them the entire time, and I think they were. So that part's really good. The turnovers, you talk about the Jefferson touchback. I mean, that's hustle from Terrell Edmonds, whether it's Avonte Maddox punching out the football from Alexander Madison, whether it's Josh Sweat with the strip sack. Josh Sweat was tremendous today. He hurt that poor backup left tackle who got carted off because it was such an unbelievable move. Looks like he blew out his knee. Josh is playing really well. There's a lot of good they gave up. I got to look at. They gave up 28 yards rushing. 28 yards rushing, and this is a team we talk about all the time, Seth. The Patriots, they play with light boxes, and they're giving up 28 yards rushing. That tells you they're just whipping that offensive line, which I kind of talked about all week. It's very weak, especially interior offensive line.
One of the things I got to say I loved about last week's game, John, and you talked about the locker room a little bit there a second ago. Everyone after the Patriots game, to a man, including A.J. Brown, talked about how that game was a, quote, teaching moment for the rest of the team. Now, I don't like week one being a teaching moment. That should be the preseason. But what was the mood in the locker room after this game? Obviously, like we've talked about, they were able to shift to the run to kind of save their hide today. Defense came up with some big plays in this one. But overall, how do you think the Eagles themselves are feeling about, sure, being 2-0, but obviously still far from playing that perfect game?
Well, I think it starts with Nick. He was a little salty, like I said, at the start before he calmed down a little bit. I don't think he's happy with the way the offense is playing as a whole, and really the passing game. He's not upset about the running game. And look, they came out. Brian Flores puts out these unique fronts and these unique blitzes, and I think they had trouble with it. And then you sort of default to Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, and on and on and on. Jordan Mailata had a big pancake block of our old friend Jordan Hicks. I mean, they were just pushing those guys off the ball. And, I asked Nick, what took you so long to get to it? We know what the Eagles believe. From Jeffrey Lurie on down. This is a passing game, a passing league. They want to have a high-octane passing offense. I think they get a little pissed off when they have to go, all right, Jason Kelsey, Lane, go win us this game. As weird as it sounds, but if that's what you got to default back to, that's a pretty good default setting.
John, you mentioned Sweat had a great game, and the young boys in the middle played, I thought, well, but they're not getting anything from that left side with Hassan Reddick. Is there any kind of a worry factor now with that thumb the way it is?
Yeah, well, I want to say one thing. Minnesota's right tackle, Brian O'Neill, he's a local kid from Delaware, but he's probably the second best right tackle in football. So he's their only good offensive lineman. They have Christian Darrisaw, but he wasn't able to play. He's very good as well, but he wasn't able to play. So Hassan was playing a really good player, number one. And I think he's having an issue with the thumb. And it makes sense because as an edge rusher, you have to use your hands. And I think he's still figuring it out. So ultimately, I think he'll get more comfortable with it and he'll play lesser players and you'll start seeing some of the splash plays. But I will say Brian O'Neill's a really good player and he did a really good job on it today.
Hey, John, have you heard any updates in terms of the shoulder injury to Avonte Maddox?
Nothing concrete, but obviously when you get ruled out, I saw him walking off, and he was holding it. It's never a good sign, as it was hanging there, he's trying to hold it. So that's one of those things, D-Gun, they give us, get the MRI tomorrow.
Yeah.
But they were banged up a little bit as well, and that continued. Now, the good news is they got the extra, the mini bye plus the extra day, because the next game's Monday night in Tampa, so they even have the extra day. So if guys are able to go, you certainly expect James Bradbury to be back by that point. We'll see on some of the others, but yeah, it's not like last year. They're already getting more banged up and more banged up. And I saw Josh was limping, just Landon was getting checked for something. Yeah, I mean, they were really lucky in injuries last year. It's kind of regressing to the mean, it seems, this year.
John, you said that, Nick is a little agitated tonight, in his press conference. Primarily because the offense isn't operating as efficiently as he wants it to operate. I know you don't know, but I'm going to ask anyway. How long can this inefficiency continue before the possibility of Nick Sirianni taking over play calling becomes a reality?
I don't think he's taken over play calling, because he kind of has admitted that he can't control the entire team like he wants to if he's calling plays. That's why he gave up it originally. He felt he was too bogged down, and he wanted to be more involved in each aspect. And by the way, I like CEO coaches better than guys that just focus on one side of football. So he's made it very clear that he doesn't want to take over play calling again. He likes being a CEO coach. If it comes down to that, it'd probably be changing to Kevin Petula to call the plays. But I think we're a long way away from that. Look, they, one thing, especially because they faced, they faced a big blitzing team today. And even New England blitzes more than average. The one thing they didn't do well offensively last year, guys, was handle pressure with hot routes. Typically, that's what quarterbacks do. The Eagles would run a lot of those bubble screens to combat it, and they don't work. They haven't worked for this team. So they ran them last year with Shane. They're running them this year with Brian, because that's part of the offense. It's Nick's offense. They have to execute better. They have to get those things better. But, yeah, I mean, overall, you got to be honest. We all love Jalen Hurts. We all know what kind of season he had. He's not performing at a high level right now as a passer. People don't like it. I know they're going to yell at me. He's not. He had the 2 deep balls, and it's not all bad, but he's not performing at the level he was last season. It's still early. I'm not hitting the panic button, but I think it's fair to say that.
John, I'll say this. I know that the Eagles don't like to sight adjust. They like to protect up and try to push the ball downfield.
Exactly.
Okay? But at what point in time, if you're going to face this continued barrage of blitzes, do you get to a point where you say, okay, we're going to max protect and send 2 guys out in the route and everybody else is going to block? Or go to a sight adjust system that allows the nod of the head of the quarterback, to say, okay, if I've got outside technique by my wide receiver, we're going to run a slant. If I got inside technique, we're either going to run a fade, we're going to cut our split down and run a fade, or run a speed out. But you got to adjust to something that allows you, to succeed, rather than just continue to bump your head against the wall. Because at the end of the day, this is the blueprint. Teams are going to continue to bring pressure at Jalen Hurts to try to stop them from getting explosive plays through the air.
Yeah, I agree. Occasionally they'll run those fades you were talking about, or the go routes, and they have success with that. But as far as the underneath stuff, the sight adjustments aren't there in this offense, and part of it is just the offense is not run that way. And to your point about keeping guys in the block, I mean, the Eagles think they have a luxury, and they do, because they know they can leave Mailata and Lane on islands, and they can hold up. Whereas you just saw a team without their left tackle, they had to do all these different things. And Josh Sweat was talking about how much help they gave Oliudo, and they still couldn't stop Josh Sweat. When you have to do that, it makes it more difficult to run your offense. So I think from the Eagles' perspective, they like the luxury of being able to say, hey, Jordan, Lane, you're on islands, and we're going to do our other stuff. And I think that's smart to take advantage of those guys. But the sight adjustments, I'm with you. The ball's got to come out. It can't be bubble screen, wide receiver screen all the time. You got A.J. Brown who can, he's got that sign in his locker that says always open. And he is always open because his body is so big, he can play power forward. Run a slant, throw it to him. You saw Devontae get loose. I just think they haven't been effective throwing the football, and who throws the football. Sometimes it's Oxum's razor. The simplest explanation is usually correct. Jalen Hurts is not throwing the football at the level he did last season.
You're right. They haven't been running those slants either. John, good to have you back on the scene. And you are right at Lincoln Financial Field, because Al Michaels called it Veterans Stadium tonight. I didn't know if they went back to the old name or not. But, no, that was a cheap shot. I love Al. Good to have you, John. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
One more question, real quick.
All right, guys. You got another question? Go ahead.
Hey, John, hold on. You still there?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, just real quick. Okay, we know it's a one-game sample with DeAndre Swift, but based on performance, does he elevate to the number one back ahead of Gainwell at this point?
Yeah, I think he has to. I'm taking credit for that because I was ripping their running back room all week. So, of course, he went for 174 or whatever he went for. That's the most yards since LaShawn McCoy in the snow game. So it's been a while. Look, they were big holes. Boston ran for 8 yards a carry as well and 5 carries. He was very effective. So, if Kenny Gainwell was healthy, he would have been effective. But I do think DeAndre Swift has more juice than the other two. And Rashad Penny, he seems buried at this point as the fourth back. But, I think he earned the spot. I do. He earned the right to be the number one guy in Tampa Bay, at least. Now, that's a much more difficult defense to run against because you have Vita Vea right in the middle. We'll learn a lot more about these running backs because part of me wants to say great game, and everybody's going to give DeAndre his flowers, and they should. He had a phenomenal game. But, man, it really was the offensive line. Those guys were just blowing people off the ball.
All right, John, thank you so much. We appreciate it, and we'll see you in like 14 days, apparently. All right? Next game,
wow.
There's a big buy for all of us here. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, that's John McMullen. He's live from Lincoln Financial Field. Coming back, Mark Farzetta extending the play with Mark Farzetta. Also some game balls that we have to give out today. Right here on the Lehocky Eagles post-game show, live from Ocean Casino. Back at